great.
But you started as an employee and made your way across to becoming an entrepreneur. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Well, basically, I was a lousy employee, so if I wanted to have a job, I better start my own company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awfully long time ago, but it does. I was reflecting yesterday, it's 20 years since I left a good, solid job with guaranteed income and an expense account to go out into the wide world and wonder. Yeah, so here I am 20 years later.
Yeah. Why were you a lousy employee?
I was a lousy employee because I was push all the time. And I didn't necessarily bring people with me on the journey, as I still am. That was my fundamental. I always ask the question, why? Why do we do it like that? And that actually might have been quite offensive to some of my colleagues.
Cool. So toward the start, what kind of skills did you learn in your corporate career and how are they relevant for you at the moment as an entrepreneur?
I think it was really great to understand how businesses work, the importance of process. I'm so interesting and exciting, aren't I? The importance of having governance, consistency, compliance. Actually, if you think about it differently, it's about building the framework and the foundations for a business. If you really want to have a big business, you've got to actually think as if you are a big business and put in place the essential things. And some of those things are not very exciting or interesting, and they're often things people don't think about, like owning your IP.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess there's probably a lot of people who might be thinking, that sounds good, I'm a bit of a lousy employee, so maybe I should be an entrepreneur instead.
Yeah, but you might hate yourself when you employ yourself. You might go, I'm still lousy.
Exactly. Do you have ideas about who you think could and should or couldn't and shouldn't make that move? And I guess how would someone know?
Well, I think if you want a nice life, don't start your own business. Some people actually just don't want to work that hard. They want to have a nice life, know what's going to happen every day, be guaranteed of an income, and feel safe and secure. And you could get that in small business as well, but being an entrepreneur is about taking risks. It's about doing things other people haven't done before. And an entrepreneurial life is definitely not for everybody, which is what I talk about in Ready to Soar. Because there's no getting out. Like, I've tried to fire myself many, many times and I still keep showing up because I have to. There's no easy out.
Is it still, you said, something safe and comfortable. Is it still comfortable and safe out there as an employee?
Look, I don't know. But, I think if you know, as an employee, if you know what your job is, if you know what success is and you're good at it, I think ultimately there will be some level of security in that. We do hear a lot about the disruption of the middle class, but I believe if people know the contribution you make and you never forget the customer when you're inside an organisation, people will see the value that you contribute. So I've had this conversation before when people are talking about, well, how do I ask for a pay rise? Well, make sure you equate your value to the customer experience and how you add value to the organisation, and you're probably going to get a better ear.
Yep. Nice. So say for the person who's right now at their work and they might be listening at work and they're not really getting full satisfaction from their life as a corporate employee, do you recommend that they, say, burn the boats and quickly, launch into their first business, or do you recommend maybe pursuing some kind of side hustle or doing it on the side and, pursuing different side projects?
I'm absolutely clear. The number one thing they should do is get a copy of my book, Ready to Soar, and read it. Now, I say that kind of facetiously, but I wrote that book, all 84,000 words of it, to answer that question, because it's actually not an easy question. Some people, it is a project on the side. Some people, they need to be all in. But what you don't want to do is find yourself in so much financial stress that you aren't able to be creative and take risks in your entrepreneurial life. So the first thing to do if you want to start your own business is start to learn to do without. What is it? No more avocado on feta and cocktails at the bar. Actually you've got to learn to do without.
I guess we were in reading Ready to Soar, you said some of the experiences as an employee, especially early on, where you had these great ideas that you thought would work really well, but it was more, no, this is what you have to do and this is what you're told to do. And I guess for us both, a year or two into our working careers, we think we're awesome. We think we've got these.
I'm sure your parents do too. That's great. We could have a fan club.
But how do you balance wanting to do more and wanting to give more versus doing what you have to do or doing what you're told, and obviously understanding that you are new and there are people with 10, 20 years experience who probably know better than
Well, it's not about knowing better. In fact, I'm really clear that just because I've been around for such a long time doesn't mean I know better. But what I always do is say, I speak on behalf of the customer. What is the customer saying? So sometimes I will come up with an idea, or somebody in the team will come up and they say, what do you think of this? And I'll say, I actually don't know, but let's put it through our customers. So recently we were changing a line of copy for red balloon positioning, and I came up with something I thought was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And the team wasn't really sure. So we put it to my huddle. We put it to, which is our private Facebook group for small businesses that people can get to if they get an invitation from join.naomisimson.com. So if they go there, they'll get the invitation. And then, but I put it there, and I actually let this kind of cohort of people who get me and understand me and have been part of the journey, so they're not just going to be random about it, and they do actually care. Our huddlers are they're very loving and very connected, and they're very supportive of each other and me. And they told me, and actually my idea was crap. It was fine because I put it to the people. So I think it's not my way or the highway. That's the difference between persistence and pigheadedness. So pigheadedness is my way of the highway. Persistence about, I see the north side, I know I need to do something differently, but allow me to listen and adjust what I need to do to ultimately get to the goal. And I think that's really important.
So what unique things do you do in your businesses to create the work culture so the people can actually question the people at the top and keep everyone accountable so everyone can push? Because I know walking through here, we're at Red Balloon offices now, and it seems like a really cool culture compared to some of the other cultures that are in corporate. So what's the difference, or the things that you put in here?
There's a time for planning and a time for ideation, and ideas, and there's a time for actually just doing the work. And what we do is make sure that we're capturing ideas, and we use a bunch of software platforms for that. So idea. And then when we go into a planning process, we kind of look at those ideas. We see if there's a relevant business case, and then they may or may not go into the plan. Yeah. But once we've done the plan, actually we just need to do the work. It's no time for ideas now. Otherwise you never get to where you're going. And we have a 6-month planning cycle. Yep. So we'll be going back into planning in January after we've done Christmas. But literally right now, every single idea is just being put in a Google Doc, and we'll get to them then. It's not the time for ideas for us. Christmas is all about selling fabulous red balloon experiences for Christmas.
Nice. I love it. Some of our questions before probably sounded a little bit loaded, but you were definitely positive in the book of that the corporate career did help for sure. And is it, I guess I'm sort of still curious to know is how much benefit are we getting from corporate career? And is it, should we be there for 3 years, for 10 years? How much? Obviously it's going to be an individual case, but how do you know when you've learnt everything that you can learn from that corporate and you've got enough to apply to having a crack at your own thing?
I suggest you'll know if you're bored.
Yeah?
Yeah, if you're not really excited to go to work, or you find it's harder to get out of bed, you just begin to think, is this where I want to spend my energy? I remember in my 30s, it's a long time ago, whatever one it was, but I remember thinking, gosh, these are the best years of my life. I've been in business for 10 years or so. Where do I want to give my energy? And especially as you go into family and your priorities begin to change, you go, wow, I've got unencumbered time. I can give it to any particular activity. Where am I going to do that? I really believe that the most precious resource we have is our time. And often when you're young, you don't see that. You think you've got endless amounts of time, whereas actually that's the most precious resource. You can always earn more money. You cannot earn more time. So the older I get, the stingier I get about my time. I don't know how you guys got a podcast.
That's what I was just thinking, actually.
So, just saying. Because I get really stingy with my time because I have to focus on what I want to get done. So I think that there is a natural evolution to that if you get there. But, somebody's going to lead these enterprises, and you might find, well, that's actually where I want to influence bigger audiences and bigger people, and I can do it inside a big business. There is no one way. And I promise you, I think there's a little bit too much stardom around this whole entrepreneur thing, and startups. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and not every idea is great. There's more startups now than there's ever been before. The ecosystem, and people are chucking money at it without necessarily really understanding the exit, the outcome, and money is not the answer.
Yep. One of my favourite parts of the book was toward the start, where you just did say, you only got one shot at life, you only got a fixed amount of time, and if you are lying down there and you're not feeling fully alive, just get up and, as you say in your title, ready to store. So there's something my favourite part of the book that kind of moves me a bit as well. So
yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's funny because when I wrote it, I was so clear on every person who stops me in the street or sees me in a restaurant or on an aircraft or going through an airport who stops me and says, I've got this business idea. Yeah. And when they ask us that, and I say us because there's 5 sharks obviously on Shark Tank, or any entrepreneur who has a successful business, we all get this question from family and friends, and it's a really responsible role we play, because if I say, oh, that sounds good, they might spend the next 17 years of their life and all their money working on it when, Naomi said it was going to be good, when actually, I don't know, it's just being nice. So I don't think our role is to be nice. None of us are nice on the show. We don't intend to change that. Our job is to really challenge people. So, if you're not prepared to read a book before starting a business, mate, you're never going to make it. It's really hard work. I learn incessantly. I never stop. I read articles. I go to conferences, to seminars all the time. I'm just trying to expand my mind. I think the older I get, the more I realise how little I know.
Yeah. Wow.
We've read a lot of books, been to a lot of seminars. That's where we saw you as well at I think it was a Tony Robbins seminar where you spoke.
Oh yeah,
beforehand.
me and Tony like that.
Yeah. But we always, in all these books, all these seminars, everything you hear on TV, it's all about the guy who was, one paycheck away from bankruptcy, or they were, they quit everything. They were living on the couch. They were eating 2-minute noodles, but eventually it worked. Is there cases where they've invested everything, they've taken on hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, they tried everything and they went bust, and then we never hear from them again? They must be out there, but we don't see them.
Hundreds of them. I think what's more interesting is culturally, where does entrepreneurship come from? And I try to talk about that in Ready to Soar. Australia is by nature entrepreneurial because we've always been so far away that if we want it, we've got to invent it. As a nation, disproportionately, we have more patents, more inventions than anywhere else. So rather than looking at the guy who was sitting there with the noodles, it's more the guy who was sitting there with the noodles and go, mate, life's got to be better. So when we look at how our economy and the global economy is going to shift as our population increases, from 7 billion to 8 billion to 16 billion people that we can now sustain, entrepreneurship will be alive and well in countries that don't have infrastructure. So India, Brazil, China, they're all entrepreneurs because that's how they've survived. They take a piece of cloth, they pour it, they rip it in half and they sell it for the same amount. Or they get a sewing machine and they start making something. So entrepreneurship is actually what will create growth. But my concern is actually about the middle class who don't understand commercial acumen. In fact, it's those who don't have much really get commercial acumen. They understand the value of every single dollar and their energy, whereas I think it's this middle class that really will struggle to understand about return on time invested. Yeah.
So you talk about all the books and seminars and all the kind of development you're still consuming. Do you think it gets to a point where you're just consuming too much of that stuff and not doing anything? And where do you think the balance is between actually doing stuff and then just consuming kind of books and all that kind of
you can get to analysis by paralysis, and you can think that you're looking for an answer. There's no answer. So we're at Christmas now for Red Balloon, and it's a very exciting time and lots of people coming, and my CFO just asked me, she said, tell me, what's the one thing, why is it all happening right now? What's the one thing? And I said, mate, it's not one thing. So, and it's the same, is that I don't know which piece of gold I will pick up just in the right moment that I need it. So actually I'm a gatherer, and one of the reasons I wrote my blog was to gather information of things that I was learning so I could use it as an ancillary brain and go back to it when I needed it, because I might not need that information now, but I might need it down the track. And sometimes I search my own blog to go, oh, did I meet such and such, like Peter Dimitris, he wrote the book. I literally looked at, he wrote the book if I could remember the name, that would be
Which
far more
say
interesting.
Peter D. Manders.
Yeah.
He wrote Fold and Abundance.
Abundance.
Yeah.
Abundance,
I love that book, Abundance. But I literally had to research and say, did I meet him? And yes, I did. I met
wow.
him in
Yeah.
Istanbul, in Turkey. So there you go. So that's my ancillary brain. If everyone wants to know what it's like inside an entrepreneur's brain, just subscribe there. It's a scary place, but never mind.
That's awesome. Another big point, I think, is optimism. Sometimes maybe just complete optimism versus facing reality. Whereas I think there's a very fine line between this is not working and this is not working yet. In the book, I think you said 2 months and 4 days before your first sale. How long do you reckon you could have held out until you realised maybe this is not the answer?
Yeah, that's where my pigheadedness comes in, because I was never giving up.
Never? Yeah.
I was never giving up, and that's because I was getting enough anecdotal information that this was a really great idea. As you know, I also launched 3 weeks after September 11. There couldn't have been a worse time to launch the business, to talk about fun and happiness, and no one was interested. So I was getting too much anecdotal information that it was going to be okay. I just needed to learn how. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to run a .com, and I just had to find out as fast as I possibly could, but no one did. So, and there was none of this fabulous ecosystem we have now for startups. Nothing.
Yeah. And what about the guys you say you meet at the airport and maybe they think, oh yeah, Naomi says this is a great idea, so I'll spend 17 years on it. Is there a way to tell that fine line between giving up and not giving up, but moving on to the next thing or taking that next step?
So I have a really fundamental thing that I look at when I'm on Shark Tank, which is, so you want to solve a problem. Can you articulate what that problem is? How many people have that problem? Where do people with that problem hang out? And how expensive is it to access those? And if you can't answer those questions, you might be trying to solve a problem that isn't really a problem and people aren't prepared to pay for. So it's only the customer kind of journey that it's customers who tell you. And sometimes people will find a problem that isn't really a problem. I mean, there was a gorgeous one, and I never speak badly of anybody who has the guts to come on Shark Tank, but there was a woman who had invented something to find pets. I've got a puppy at the moment, and it was this Q code that you downloaded the app, and then everybody had to have the app and all the things, and Janine just said, well, why don't you just put your mobile phone number on the tag? So in other words, it was almost like she was looking for a solution, but was it a real problem? She saw it as a problem, but then how many other people did that? And accessing them, the expense of accessing them may be way too too large to actually justify it's not going to be commercial success. But it doesn't mean, I think anybody who has a crack is great.
Yeah, love it.
Nice.
So if you wanted to answer some of those questions that you said about what the customer really wants, what are some ways to go about it? Do you recommend, going direct cold calling, or just doing some ads, or how would you go about doing that?
Cold calling is a good one. That's what Steve did. Like, Steve literally was knocking on people's front doors saying, would you like to be on the World Wide Web? And as we know, he created an incredible ISP, which he exited. But, he connected hundreds of thousands of people to the internet. The way he did that was by knocking on front doors. So understanding that customer experience it will always serve you. The thing is that also Henry Ford said, if I had have asked my customers, they would have asked for a faster horse. So sometimes people can't imagine. So at that point, you need to show them a minimal viable product. You need to be able to say to them, look, this is what it could look like. This is what it could be like. Those first years at Red Balloon, when we sold, 300 experiences in the first year, because people didn't understand what it was. And it was actually when people were given a red envelope, they got it, they used it, and they go, actually, this really works. And that was our job. Even if I had have taken a whole lot of funding and got more money, I couldn't have grown my business anymore, because I had to prove that it was real, especially being online in those days, because there was distrust for the internet. So, some businesses, it's not it just takes time to build trust and to build trust for the brand and what it is.
Nice, lovely. And in the book, you talk about taking opportunities and being ready to, if there's an opportunity presented, take it. I guess, how do people learn to, or practice, or get in the habit of firstly recognising opportunities, and secondly taking them? What do they actually do if they think, oh, there's an opportunity, what do I do now?
Yeah, I think back to your earlier question, a lot of people ask their family and friends. Some people won't talk to anybody. They go, it's my idea, I don't want to share it. What would happen? And then there's others who ask their family and friends. Family and friends just want you to feel happy. And they think if they say nice things to you, you will be. And that might not be the best thing. So I think when you've got an idea, I would first of all look at where is that industry? Who is in that industry? Do I have expertise? There's some really clear kind of guides in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and he talks about the fact that what do you want to be the world's best at, and can you be the best at that? And so, as I point out in Ready to Soar, there's a lot of kind of soul searching and what is my secret power? What would make me world famous? And really understanding what that could be. And you might just be world famous in Balmain or world famous, you know, it doesn't have to be global. And when people pitch ideas, I know you've got this down the track, but when people pitch the ideas and I'm just trying to cut the interview short, clearly, you know, I'm rushing to the end questions, but clearly when people pitch, their job is to create excitement, relevance, but also not to overpromise, because as soon as you overpromise, you lose your integrity and your authority with the person you're pitching to. So, you know, when I was... it was 2:00 in the morning. It was the after party of the Logies. And Richie, the bachelor, comes up to me and says, I've got this fabulous business idea. And I was standing with Waleed and Peter Hillier. And actually, I think it was Gary from MasterChef, that we were all standing there, and Richie came up and he said, got this amazing business idea. And he said, I don't want to tell you what it is right now. But it will be bigger than Facebook. And I go, okay, so can I just coach you on your pitching and say, just never say that, because instantly you've lost authority and credibility, because Facebook, you know, Google, Amazon, these are 1 in a billion chances that you will have the resources, the capacity, the vision, and the moment and in time to create such an enterprise. So he said, well, can I tell you at another time? And I said, yeah, sure. And so he put my number in his phone, and like all young people, he then checked if it was really my phone and then called the number straight away, and of course I just laughed. So he did call me afterwards, and I encouraged him to read Ready to Soar. In fact, I sent him a copy. I'm yet to hear back from him. But it might well come, but you know, as a process, it's not like, oh, let me see if I can paint a picture. I either did or didn't. Creating an enterprise where there's material commercial risk, people might be employed, and you know, there's a lot of risk around it, and there's responsibility. And whenever you create a business, you also have to live within the laws of the land, and you've got to know what they are.
Nice. Well, maybe that's a good time to talk about some Shark Tank. And I'm sure since being on Shark Tank, you get, as you say, a lot more randoms on the street asking you. That was one red flag, you know, bigger than Facebook. Another, you talk about a whole lot of red flags in the book. There's 3 billion customers. We only need 0.001% and we'll be billionaires. What are some other red flags that instant turn-offs?
Instant turn-offs for me is when they think they've got all the answers. Like, you want a certain sense of confidence, but actually the reason why you would want investment from one of us is because we can add value to you. And if you can't listen, leaders listen. So who are you as a leader? And if that person doesn't demonstrate to me leadership qualities, which is actually about humility and the ability to ask questions, be truly curious, then it's really not the right place. Then you want, then you just want dumb money. You just want, you know, maybe go to, maybe go to a bank. Maybe I shouldn't say dumb money and a bank in the same sentence. I might have offended somebody, but never mind about that. But they don't take equity, so that's why they can afford to be a little hands-off.
So humility is one thing. What other things are the positive things you go for when you're investing in a business?
I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for persistence. I'm looking for a sense of purpose, how they're going to contribute. And I want them to be positive. You know, it's a long, hard journey, if their language isn't positive. But also I need them to be realistic. And, you know, finding customers is hard and it's expensive. And when somebody says to me, what do you want with the money? You know, they ask the question and then they say, I'm going to spend it on marketing. And, of course, I'm a marketing professional. I said, so exactly which part of the funnel are you going to spend that on? What are you going to do with that? And they look at me completely blankly. I go, mate, you don't need money for marketing. You need money for education in who you are. And you need to find people that you can trust to do that. So, a bit of marketing is not an answer.
Yeah.
And marketing as a science, it's complex, it's sophisticated, and it's expensive if you get it wrong.
Love it. You've talked about a whole bunch of books so far. Good to Great, a bit of Lean Startup was in there. I think you were referencing a little bit of Crossing the Chasm maybe. What are some of your favourite books? And I'm guessing you read a lot because there were so many cool stories and quotes throughout your books.
It's not plagiarism, love. You're allowed to actually reference greats.
Definitely.
Greats. Abundance I also mentioned, of course, because I love that book. A gorgeous book that I read years ago is a book called Small Giants, and that's a beautiful book because it really validates people who are making massive contributions in their community, and not everybody wants to be big. It's about being the world's best at what you want to be in your world, and I just really love that book. I think it's really great. A lot of the work by Seth Godin is great. I have referenced many of his works over the years. However, he writes too much. Can't keep up. I've got time. Here's another book. He literally publishes a book every year. Yeah. And it's almost we haven't digested the last one before he's gone on to the next.
I think he's slowing down. He's moving towards online courses.
Yeah.
We spoke to him a couple of months ago.
Isn't
Phenomenal.
he? Yeah. He's a great guy, incredible mind. He's like a mind on legs, which is wonderful. And the world is very grateful to have him. And I have referenced his work a lot. So, look, I've got my favourites. I love Vern Harnish. Everybody knows that.
Yes, I saw you said you went to a couple of events as well, yeah?
Yeah, way early, in the early days. Yeah, it's great.
So with Peter Diamandis's book in Abundance, in his book, he's very optimistic about the future, despite some of the big challenges that are coming in the world. Are you yourself optimistic about what's coming in the future of business with some of the big challenges that might be on the horizon?
If I just look at my 20-year journey as an entrepreneur, actually life was so much simpler. So life is more complex. It's so funny, we've got all these labour-saving devices, and yet we're busier than ever. The paperless office never quite came, and all those sorts of things. So, but when I think to the future, I'm excited by the potential of us really nurturing creativity and design and curiosity. And AI doesn't bother me. It doesn't concern me. Automation doesn't concern me. But what I think people may well struggle with is a sense of purpose. Because in my parents' generation, it was a job for life. It was about survival. My generation was far more about how do I want to contribute. My children's generation is far more about where do I belong and what are my people. And they're far more driven by values than probably the two previous generations. And I think that that's what will either unite us or not. Peter speaks very clearly and is quite controversial about the fact that we are not moving into utopia. Let's not believe that all of this is going to give us equality. Let's not believe it's going to give us all a voice. And it will still be the survival of the fittest. But perhaps it is the survival of the most curious and the ones who are prepared to learn. Education in my world is everything. And that doesn't need to be formal education. I'm not doing a little plug for the University of Melbourne, which I sit on the board, of course, I think. But I think continual education. And one of the challenges that we have is there's so much content. How can you tell fact from fiction? How can you tell crap from creative? And it's really, that's a challenge for us when we just, and I think that's why influencers or people who've done it before become more important, because their voice is more valid. They have authority because they've done it before. Too many people are consultants who say they have all the answers when actually you look and they're 20 nothing and never done anything in their life. And I'm not being rude, because I think good on them for having a crack, but they need to build their authority.
We've got heaps more to ask, but I reckon that was an awesome little ending there.
I've got more to say. Is that it? Great, I'm out.
Whereabouts can people find you? You mentioned your blog. Obviously, they can check you out on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
But where do you want to direct people?
Well, if you go to naomisimson.com and you join our huddle, but also I really want to encourage people to align with what their own belief system is. Like, really, if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, just don't. Like, seriously, it's not... Catherine, my colleague who works with me, she watches me every single day and she goes, seriously, I wouldn't want that life. I quite like this life. She said that to me this morning. So it's not for everybody. The other thing is that the reason why I blog and make it available, people I write, I've got an online training course, which you can find at education.naomisimson.com. The reason why I do this is to just share what I've learned. If I can help people, I became role model because there is a dearth of role models. And I was very happy to do that job and share what I learned. So, yeah, that to me is success, is when people come up to me and say, hey, I read your books, I did your course, I've started my business, I get what I need to do now. I will do the hard work. Yeah.
Phenomenal, I love it.